Hey everyone, and welcome to this little chatette with Lee Coates from ESG Accords. I'm Jim Blackstock, Fund Database Manager and Product Manager at Ethical Screening. And it's been a very interesting month. We've had some interesting announcements from the FCA and some interesting news from ESG Accord. So thought it was a good opportunity to have a little chat, Lee, and find out a little bit more about what you've been up to this last month and how that could be of interest to our fund database users.
We've got to the stage now where we're building out the website. So we're still on track for a June 2023 launch. And we're currently taking pre-registrations for advisors so that from the day we launch, they can access our suitability framework free of charge to help them deal with consumer duty.
Fantastic. So it's going to be a free of charge access tool for advisors, for other investment managers, similar user base to our own. What sort of tools will they be able to access on the website? What's going to be the core features that they can see?
Well, the core feature will be we call it our suitability framework, but it's actually a compliance framework. So it helps advisors introduce ESG and sustainability into the advice process, and it's consumer duty and SDR friendly, so it's ready for the labels, and we probably talk about the labels in a minute, but it's ready for the labels, disclosure, anti-greenwashing. So it's say free to access compliance framework. It doesn't push existing compliance processes out of the way. It's a bolt-on to everything, because we think that consumer duty adds this new element to the advice process for many firms. So everybody's used to fact-finding. Investment advisors are used to ascertaining attitude to risk, capacity for loss information from clients. But what consumer duty requires is for clients to make an informed choice. Part of the informed choice is advisors need to demonstrate that they have given the clients enough knowledge to make an informed choice. And our suitability process is that third element. So they already do fact find, they do attitude to risk. And ours is just a bolt-on suitability framework that goes through asking the right things at the right time in the right way, getting it recorded, and then advisors can springboard from that into the due diligence. And then from there, they can be using Screening's ethical fund database to pick the funds, because we don't do that bit, but we're the bit that advisors need before they go into the ethical fund database.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we're in the business of trying to make what is a complex, responsible investment world slightly easier to navigate for advisors. Something that the complexity has been made more apparent through the labels. There's a nice little segue there. So your tool is SDR compliant. We've had the announcement from the FCA recently. There's going to be a delay to their next published framework. What's your take on that then? How do you think we can prepare for the changes now that there is that delay? Are we going to see radical changes at this stage, or is it more of an opportunity to reflect?
I think it's there is a huge amount of reflection going on within the FCA, basically because of the amount of feedback that they've had to the consultation paper. So October 22 consultation paper comes out, massive response to that, and the FCA is progressively working through it. So originally they sort of slated end of June as the release date for the policy statement. So we've now got that pushed back to Q3. And I think that's the right thing to do, because once the policy statement comes out, that's it. That sets the framework for all funds in relation to whether or not they'll go for a label and what the labels actually do. And then for funds that don't want to market themselves as ESG or sustainable, there are still the disclosure requirements. There's so much talk around the labels. Everybody gets sort of focused on, are you going to go for this label, that label, or you're not going to have a label at all. But the biggest impact on the industry, and this is the fund managers and advisors, is at the disclosure level. So those funds that make a decision they're not going to apply for a label will still have to have a document that advisors will have to give to clients, normally via a web link, but this document will be a disclosure statement that will say ABC fund managers UK equity fund does not apply any sustainable or ESG factors to its investment strategy, and that will have to be a document that advisors will have to give to clients. So that's where the real change comes. It isn't about the labels. It's about the putting a document in front of a client that says, I'd like to recommend 10 funds. Here they all are. And none of them do sustainability and ESG. Isn't it great?
Well, yes, isn't it great? I think for us, obviously, our database is orientated towards responsibly managed funds. We'd expect all of the funds on there to obtain a label. So I suppose, yes, the disclosure requirements are going to be very important, but how that then translates to how these funds have to market themselves is going to be another shift as well, isn't it? How can sort of advisors prepare for that at this stage? Your tool obviously has a degree of integration. For us, we will have to change how we assess funds based on how they eventually align to the labels. Is there much more that an advisor can do at this stage to prepare for those changes that are coming?
I'll answer that question in a sec, but I want to pick up on the point where you say about orientate your information in relation to the labels. I think the value from the data within the ethical screenings database is at the second level. The funds will just simply say, if we end up with 3 funds, that's a proposal, maybe a 4th, don't know. But if we end up with 3 funds, they're just headline. It's one of those, or one of those. How the funds do what they do is what your database is for. So you might have to put a bit on top, but advisors are going to need the detail you cover. As far as what advisors need to do now, that's all compliance driven. It's all process driven. Under Consumer Duty, which obviously comes in on the 31st of July, advisors are going to be forced to demonstrate that their clients have the knowledge to make informed decisions. And even if an IFA is convinced that all of their clients don't want ESG and sustainability, which is theoretically possible, the point is, under Consumer Duty, that firm is going to have to demonstrate that it's asked every single client in a way that the client could make an informed decision. So simply saying, do you want ESG? What's that then? Oh, don't worry about it. It's environmental stuff. That's not Consumer Duty friendly. The client can't make a decision until they've had some element of education. So advisors will have to say, here's a document that explains everything from conventional through ESG, sustainable labels, and ethical and responsible. Read all of that, decide where you'd like to go, and then I can advise you. So that process needs to be in place. The label, if you like, codify some of that, and that won't be till 2024. But we've got 31st of July coming very fast now, and advisors need that process in place. Otherwise, they're not going to be Consumer Duty compliant, and almost the labels become irrelevant if you're not compliant to Consumer Duty.
Yeah, I mean, you're very right. Our tool is very much a complementary tool to that, allowing advisors to differentiate products in the market. I think for us, the question is, as you say, fundamentally, how funds operate may not change radically, and the information we provide on how a fund screens and goes about its non-financial stock selection will still be relevant. But then the way the FCA want to create this more transparent marketplace, I mean, certainly our research has pointed to the majority of retail funds slipping into that focus label, if you will. So there will be a demand to sort of differentiate focus funds to sort of complement that transparency. Otherwise, that transparency maybe doesn't help investors navigate the market in the way the FCA would hope.
Yeah, I think, I mean, from if you look at some of the conventional performance and fund information services, they'll find it quite easy to add a label marker. Does it have a label? If yes, what type? And that's a sort of a tick box exercise. But that only tells, it's like saying, please identify all UK equity funds for me. Well, that's easy. You just identify, you tick the box for UK equity and get a list of UK equity funds. If then you assume that all the funds in the UK equity list are absolutely identical, run exactly the same, and they're all going to do the same job, then you'd be mistaken. And that applies just as much to ESG and probably more so to ESG and sustainability. because some of the differences are a lot less than subtle. There'd be subtle differences between one UK equity fund and another, but some of the differences in the way a sustainable focus fund is run compared to another one, there'd be massive gulfs, which comes back to, again, the disclosure.
Yeah, exactly, and that's how we'll all have to evolve, perhaps, to navigate. How these things redefine themselves, and how they need to comply once the regulations land. Well, thanks very much for your time, Lee. I think we'll wrap it up there. It was going to be a short chat anyway, but exciting times coming up for your organisation, for ours as well, as we evolve in this sort of new regulatory landscape. So just remind us then on your timetable for your ESG Accord web pages, and we'll be putting up links to the registration site currently, but just remind us what advisors will get access to eventually and the time frame for that.
Okay, so once we go live in June, they'll get access to the free compliance framework, CPD training, ask an expert, find a sustainable compliance firm, find a sustainable power planner. We'll actually have a database of advisors that use our framework or have an equivalent. So find a sustainable advisor, that will be public accessible. We'll have a breakdown of all the FCA regulations and how they relate to ESG and sustainability, training on how to advise pension schemes, training on how to advise charities, deep dive reports on MPS tax efficient, later in the year multi-asset. It goes on. It's going to be a big project.
A big project. Well, we look forward to hearing more about it. And congratulations to you and Ellie for the fine work you've done so far.
Thanks, Jim. Good to speak to you.
You too. Have a great day.
Thanks.